That's what I hear when I turn off the light. It doesn't show anything when I turn it on. I know it's there, though. Liam and his grandmother were not very close. But when she died, she left him her old house, a Victorian-style house on the edge of town that was in bad shape. The walls were covered in worn wallpaper, and the wooden floors creaked every time someone walked on them. Liam found comfort in the thought of having his own home, even though the environment was tense. The only thing that didn't seem right was the upstairs. It was always locked because his grandma was very strict about it. Liam had asked her about it a few times when they were kids, but she always said no, her eyes dark with memories that she hadn't said out loud. She would say, "Some doors are meant to stay closed." Liam didn't go near the attic door for weeks after moving in. But as the nights went by, he became more and more interested. The old house had drafts, and the attic felt off. There was more to it than just how the air got heavier near the door. Every time he walked by it, he felt like someone was watching him. He found an old brass key one night while going through a box. As he held it, his fingers felt tingly. He climbed the creaky stairs and slid the key into the upstairs lock without giving it a second thought. When the door opened with a groan, it let in a dark, musty room. In the dim light of his torch, the dust in the air was thick and moving around. There was only one old rocking chair in the attic, and it was placed next to a round window. His mind was not at ease with the chair. It moved a little like someone had been sitting there. The wooden floor below it was stained with a dark, scary mark that went outward, like something had seeped into the wood and caused it to change color. Liam took a careful step forward. He could hear his heart beating fast. The temperature dropped quickly as he reached out to touch the chair. In the loft, there was a soft sound that was almost impossible to hear. Breathing. He turned the flashlight around and looked in every direction, but there was nothing there. There was nothing there but empty space and the heavy weight of the darkness. He shook his head and shut the door to the attic behind him, telling himself it was all in his head. But that night, while he was sleeping, he heard it again. A slow, steady breathing pattern. It was soft at first, almost like the silence of the night. That being said, it got louder every night. Better. Liam started to feel sleepy. He would wake up in the middle of the night, soaked in sweat and with the sound of other people breathing all around him. He looked in every window and corner, but didn't find anything. He chose to test something one night, putting out the lights and sitting in the dark to listen. It was there. How they breathe. He turned the light back on. Keep quiet. Off. The air came back. Keep quiet. It was cold in his body. He wasn't making it up. He looked through the house's old records to find answers. He found an old newspaper piece in a dirty box hidden in the basement. A local woman was found dead in her attic, 'cause not known. The piece was written many years ago. The sister of his grandma, Eleanor, had suddenly disappeared one night. Later, her body was found in the attic, with a scared look on her face. No signs that someone broke in. No one knows what killed them. The attic was cursed is just an old story that people still tell. Liam felt sick to his stomach. Did his grandmother lock the attic to keep something inside or outside? Liam locked the door to his room that night. However, At 3:15 a.m., the air came back. This time, though, it wasn't far away. It was in the room. As he lay there frozen, his chest got tight, and he almost couldn't breathe. He then saw it. The ghost. It went across the roof and got bigger and darker, like it was eating off of the fear in the air. It had no shape, it was just a black space that didn't make sense. A rough voice said, "You let me go." Liam rushed to turn on the light. As soon as the second light came in, the shadow was gone. There was no wind. There was silence in the house. Liam knew, though, that it wasn't over. The next day, he tried to make sense of what had happened while denying it. But as night fell, he lost his will. He armed himself with a lantern and a baseball bat this time. His heart was beating fast as he climbed the upstairs stairs and opened the door. The chair was moving once more, moving by itself. Then there was a whisper. It was so close that it felt like cold air was blowing on his neck. "Liam." His torch went out, and the breathing changed to a deep, rumbling growl. The shadow rose from the ground, and dark threads wrapped around him. He tried to move, but his body felt like it was frozen. As the thing loomed over him, the room and reality began to bend. After that, everything went dark. It was open when I woke up the next morning. Liam was gone, though. Later, neighbors said they heard strange sounds coming from the house at night. Soft, regular breathing, sounds coming from the attic. And if someone was brave enough to go inside, also turn off the light, they could also hear it. Mommy, why is the doll moving on its own? It began with things that had been put away in the attic. Claire had never gone up in the attic. She didn't like the damp, musty air. It made her feel like the past was stuck up there, waiting for someone stupid to disturb it. But that night, as she looked for an old blanket, she felt drawn to a box made of wood in the corner. She didn't know what it was. Even though the lock was rusty, the lid could be opened with a little force. Inside, a ceramic doll was tucked away in yellowed, crushed newspaper. Face was strangely perfect. Skin that was smooth and free of marks, lips that were pink, and blue eyes that seemed to stare into space. It wore a thin white dress that was pretty once but was faded and torn now. Claire felt a strange chill go up her spine as she ran her finger over the cold doll's surface. She couldn't remember this doll. Claire picked it up and put it on a high shelf in her daughter's room. Since it was still in good shape, it felt wrong to throw it away. She put Lily to bed, but she couldn't get rid of the feeling that the doll's eyes were on her. Claire woke up that night to a noise, a light tap. As her heart beat fast, she sat up and went to Lily's room. The door was open. She was sure she had shut it. Claire crept in on tiptoe, hoping to see Lily get out of bed. But she was sound asleep. Then Claire looked up and saw the shelf. The doll was not there anymore. She turned to look at the moving chair when she heard a soft sound. It moved slowly back and forth. The doll just stood there. Claire couldn't get her breath out. She was sure she left it on the shelf. It made her feel bad, but she put the doll back where it belonged and left the room, telling herself that she was just tired. Claire found the doll on the kitchen table the next morning. She asked Lily, "Did you bring this downstairs?" Lily turned her head away. "No, Mom. Last night I saw her move, though. Claire tried to laugh. Sweetheart, dolls don't move. Lily gave her a serious look with her wide eyes. She does. There were strange events over the next few days. There were whispers in Lily's room that were too soft for Claire to understand, but they were enough to make her skin crawl. The TV turned on by itself and always showed fuzz. Small things vanished and then showed up in strange places. The next morning, Lily screamed. David and Claire ran into her room. It was scary for their daughter, who was curled up in the corner and pointed at the moving chair. Lily cried out, "The doll." She turned to look at me. Claire felt sick to her stomach. The doll sat in the chair with its back turned and its blue eyes fixed on Lily. That was the last blow. Claire ran outside, grabbed the doll, and threw it into the fire pit in the backyard. The flames came to life and ate the doll whole. Claire thought she heard a high-pitched scream for a moment. After that, it was gone. Claire finally took a breath. It was over. She thought that. That night, Claire woke up to the sound of small feet. She looked around. Lily stood by the bed with her lips moving and a sound that was barely loud enough to be heard. "You shouldn't have burned me, Mommy." Claire's heart stopped beating. The doll was in Lily's arms. Not touched. Not burned. Its blue eyes were like glass and they were watching. No matter what happens, don't look at the last compartment. Ryan had gone home many times on the midnight train. It was always quiet and mostly empty, like being alone in a creepy way. That could be scary if you thought about it too much. Tonight, though, something felt different. He had a strong feeling that something was wrong from the moment he got on the train. The air was old, thick with something that isn't said. There were only 3 other people in the train car, so it was almost empty. An old man with a newspaper in his hand and a wrinkled suit. A woman in a red coat who was just looking at her phone. The music was loud enough that only the teen boy could hear it. Ryan sat where he always does. That's when he saw it. There was thick black tape over the last room door. A small, worn-out sign hung from the handle. "Do not open." Ryan made a face. Why would there be a closed area on a public train? He looked at the old man. "Hey, what's with the last car?" The old man's hands were shaking. "You don't ask about that." Ryan tried the woman instead. "Do you know?" He was talking when she stopped him. "Forget it's there." The kid turned up his music and didn't look at her. Ryan became more interested. Was this a joke? The lights flashed as the train went through a tunnel. Ryan saw something move behind the tape door for a split second. A shadow. A whisper. No matter what happens, don't look at the last compartment. Ryan had gone home many times on the midnight train. It was always quiet and mostly empty, like being alone in a creepy way that could be scary if you thought about it too much. Tonight, though, something felt different. He had a strong feeling that something was wrong from the moment he got on the train. The air was old, thick with something that isn't said. There were only 3 other people in the train car, so it was almost empty. An old man with a newspaper in his hand and a wrinkled suit. A woman in a red coat who was just looking at her phone. The music was loud enough that only the teen boy could hear it. Ryan sat where he always does. That's when he saw it. There was thick black tape over the last room door. A small, worn-out sign hung from the handle. "Do not open." Ryan made a face. Why would there be a closed area on a public train? He looked at the old man. "Hey, what's with the last car?" The old man's hands were shaking. "You don't ask about that." Ryan tried the woman instead. "Do you know?" He was talking when she stopped him. "Forget it's there." The kid turned up his music and didn't look at her. Ryan became more interested. Was this a joke? The lights flashed as the train went through a tunnel. Ryan saw something move behind the tape door for a split second. He took a deep breath. He didn't listen to the advice and stood up and walked toward the last room. The black tape was weak and the ends were rolling up. As he reached for the handle, his fingers were shaking. The old man said a prayer in his head. The woman turned away. Ryan opened the door. There was nothing at first. Nothing but darkness. The space smelled like rust and death. Then, a shape showed up. A tall, bent figure with empty eyes and a wide grin. Turned its head to look at him. There was a whisper in his ear. "You shouldn't have looked." The lights went out. There was a scream on the train. His scream. Ryan tried to get away, but cold, unseen hands grabbed him and pulled him deeper into the dark. After that, there was silence. The train was empty when the lights came back on. The old man, the woman, what a teenager. It's gone. There was black tape on the door again. The sign hung there, like it had never been touched. What about Ryan? He was not seen again. But sometimes, if you take the midnight train and pay close attention, from behind the last room door, you can hear his screams that are hard to make out. And if you ever have a strong urge to open it, do not. Ryan is still inside, waiting,